Hello, listeners. Welcome back to Somi's Chai and Chat. Continuing our topic on Gandhi, today we will be exploring his new phase in life, that is, moving to London to do his higher studies. Stay tuned. When Gandhi starts talking about his travel on the boat from India to London, I started thinking, why did he go on the boat? And then I recalled it was around 1880s, and of course he had to travel on the boat, and it took a long time. I think about 21 days, and there were other issues on the boat like seasickness and having to use salt water on the seawater for washing and cleaning and other things. Therefore, he talks a little bit about those things. However, the first impression about his travel is that of his friend Dr. Mehta, who had helped him to get used to settle down in the UK. And when he went to stay in one of the small places which he was renting, his friend suggested him that he would stay with a English family. And I'll say in quotes, he said, "We come to England not so much for the purpose of studies as for gaining experience of English life and customs. And for you, need to live with a family." Quotes, end quotes. It is very fascinating to think, as a foreigner myself and as an immigrant now, to think that I also, when I moved in, helped a lot to live with a family and see how they lived in their country rather than living by myself and just making friends of my own people. The main challenge, however, he faced living with the family was his food. Him being a vegetarian and taken a vow not to ever eat meat, it was challenging for him to stay within the circle of vegetarianism when he had access to limited food with where he was living. He only got bread and potatoes and spinach, and also very plain food. He would eat that, and he was also shy to ask for more bread, so he would not get more than 2 to 3 slices of bread and maybe some potatoes and spinach. And also he didn't get any milk, as he mentions in his book, and therefore he was going through a challenging phase where he was trying to figure out to feed himself or not stay hungry for long periods of time. Continuing being adamant about his diet, his friend tried to convince him to change his diet, and Gandhi never did. He was so protective of his vow to his mother that he would never eat meat outside. He never changed the way he consumed food. And finally, he moved out of that house where he was living, and he moved into another house where beforehand he explained that he was a vegetarian and he had this dietary requirements. And the widow lady, who was the owner of the house, the landlady, she promised to take care of him and provide him with ample amounts of vegetarian food. During the same time, he also started wandering around to find vegetarian restaurants around his house. And he would walk about 10 or 12 miles per day just to find out where the vegetarian restaurant was. And if he didn't find, he would go to a restaurant, eat a lot of bread, and come back. When he was doing this, he mentions in his book that he bumped into a vegetarian restaurant and how happy that made him, and all the foods that he enjoyed when he first discovered that place. And he says that all these days that he was praying to God to protect him and show him a way, finally God had answered his prayers. And the happiness in him, he has written about finding water in an oasis or finding treasure in the barren land, that kind of happiness. Finally, this is the main thing he has mentioned as first challenge that he had to go through when he moved to a different country from India, and feeling happy that he had kept his vow for his mother and also didn't break it and found a solution. Now moving to my listeners. So my question to you is, what made you think of a vow or a promise that you made for yourself and it only became stronger? Or what promise you made for yourself and then you had to break it, and what were your feelings? Reflect on that and we will catch up again. In the next part, he starts talking about how he started becoming more of an English gentleman, the experiments he tried, the things he tried to learn, and how he felt. He starts talking about those things. He also experimented with a new suit, new way of wearing tie, because the ready-made ties were not as gentleman way of wearing, and he got a hat, and then he requested his brother to send a double watch chain of gold, and he spent about 10 minutes in front of mirror every day to get ready, which he thinks was a weird thing because mirror was a luxury when he was back in India and only got it when he went to a barber for a haircut. And here every day he was spending 10 minutes to get ready. He was also told that to be more gentleman, he should take dancing lessons, French and elocution, which he started learning all those things. He mentions that he spent a lot of money on them and then he wasn't learning. He was just not as good and not learning as quickly. And then remember, he is still a student and trying to become luxurious when your student is costing a lot more money to you. So he had to stop all those because of financial reasons. And from there he also thought maybe because he wasn't learning dancing as quickly, he should spend time learning about music. So he started learning violin lessons and then continued to going to a different teacher for elocution and all the other things, and finally realizing that he was not going to spend his lifetime in England and there was no point in learning all these things. And also asks a very important question for himself, that is, quotes, how could dancing make me a gentleman? End quotes. The overall time period he spent on all these things, which he calls as infatuation, was about 3 months. He didn't spend more than that. And then finally he wrote letters to his elocution teacher and violin teacher explaining why he thinks he shouldn't be continuing pursuing all these ideas because of him becoming a gentleman. According to Gandhi, the character made a gentleman of him, not learning all these things.